Hello, good afternoon. Yellow jackets and ladybugs, yellow bugs and lady jackets. That's okay. We can be backwards today. Happy Friday, you guys. I'm so glad to be back with you. It's been a couple of weeks since we were here because if you watched Faye News on Wednesday, then you know that is because we were out of town doing all kinds of crazy things and working on Faye Hollow and beautifying that, and then also looking at properties for Dreamhaven. And now we're back with our regularly scheduled Friday author reads. And I'm your host, Fairy Princess Lolly. Please hit the like and subscribe button. I'm just going to get that right out of the way at this moment. And I'm here today with our author, William Joseph Roberts. And William, please say hello to everybody there.
Hey, y'all.
All right. So please tell us, if you will, a little bit about you, where you're from, and, give a shout out to if you have any home conventions or events that you like to go do author tables at. Give a shout out to your home peeps. And let's hear a little bit about you.
Well, I was born and raised in Southern West Virginia, and that almost makes me think of the jerk. And I was born a poor black child. That's a horrible opening. But I was raised in the hills of West Virginia and really couldn't find anything to help me with writing. My teachers couldn't even help me to learn the art of writing and getting things published and things like that. So lo and behold, all the years that I put into short stories and trying to find a way to do the craft, I found Liberty Con about 3 years ago, and that is my home convention. I am now staffed, unfortunately. Sometimes it's unfortunate, but it's a blast. But the things that I have learned just by talking to my tribe, I have met so many awesome people. I've been to a few other smaller conventions like Anachrocon. I was at the last one for Anachrocon, next chapter con. I'm supposed to be going to Fantasy this coming year. I was scheduled for this past year, but it got canceled. But I have been dabbling in pretty much any genre. It depends on what the evil mind squirrels are demanding at that time for what I'm going to write, whether it's sci-fi, horror, fantasy. Put out my first novel, Flux Runners, which I got a copy.
Yeah, hold it close to the camera so we can see.
Okay.
There we go.
I put that out last November.
Looks nice.
Since then, that one was a labor of love. That took me, all in all, it took me a year plus because I polished it, I nitnoid it, and it finally got to the point of I just got to get it done and be done. Move on. Then I turned around and did this, Widowmakers, in 2 months.
And so these are sci-fi or they're historical, alt history, kind of like steampunk is alt history.
Yeah, Flux Runners is space opera, sci-fi with a good dash of adult humor comedy. I've even got disclaimers in there just because. Widowmakers is alt history, sci-fi. Military members on the battlefield of Normandy. Actually, a crew chief, which I based in my last duty squadron, which was the 2nd Fighter Squadron. They were flying P-61s in France just after Normandy, which is awesome. So I tied some of my own history into it.
So have you yourself served then?
Yeah, I was in the Air Force for 10 years. Crewed on it. I crewed F-15. I was a wrench monkey.
You actually flew an F-15?
Well, yeah, I've flown one like once, but no, I turned wrenches on most of the time.
Gotcha. Oh man, that sounds like it would be so cool.
The pilot, me and the pilot knew each other when he gave me the incentive flight, and there's this thing between pilots and ground crew, and especially if you're the dedicated crew chief on the aircraft, you got this thing working with your pilots where you're always trying to one up each other. So he takes me up, and we're out there flying around. We get out doing combat maneuvers with the rest of we end up in a 4-ship, so 4 aircraft launch. And the others were like from admin and finance and stuff like that. Well, they were puking in a matter of seconds, and they were turning around going back through the pattern so they can land. So he starts trying to screw me up and getting me to pass out. And we got up to like 8.5, 9 G's. And I'm starting to tunnel vision. It's like, you still ain't got me. And he gave up.
So Sorry, go ahead.
He let me fly it for a little bit, and that was wild. I mean, turning wrenches on him for years, and then all of a sudden he let me fly this beast. And we ended up going and cruising around, just checking things out and burning off some fuel before we came back. But that was one of the bonuses to serving. When you re-enlist and stuff like that, they'll give you an incentive flight sometimes if you've been doing good.
Well, of course, thank you for your service.
Not a problem.
So, is this what got you interested in writing the types of novels that you do? Is your connection with that?
I mean, honestly, the idea of this started at LibertyCon 2 years ago. I was heading to a panel, and I don't even remember what panel it was. And John Holmes from Canon Publishing was like, "Hey, Hillbilly," which my call sign in the Air Force was Hillbilly, and
Pilgrim?
it's Hillbilly.
Oh, Hillbilly. Hey, do you know a Dan Holifield?
Yes.
Dan Holifield says, "Put your mic closer to your mouth, Will." He's watching from YouTube. Hi, Dan.
But no, John Holmes flagged me down, and he's like, "When are you going to write something for me?" "Well, what do you want?" "Well, we're doing this," and he explained the whole JTF series, where it's military members taking on mythological creatures and things like that on the battlefield, because war brings them out. And that's where I came up on the spot. I came up with the idea of Widowmakers, where this aircraft mechanic is fighting gremlins. Yeah, you see the irony of the whole thing. But so far, everybody has enjoyed it. The aircraft, I've got aircraft porn in here. So if you like aircraft and the details and the maneuvers and stuff, you'll enjoy it. But I finished this, then turned around and in 2.5 months, I wrote Wildcat, Foreclosure of a Dream, which turned into Chris Kennedy Publishing right now. That's part of the Fallen World series by Christopher Wood.
What is the Fallen World series?
It is post-apocalyptic. If you've ever played Fallout 4 or any of the Fallout series, then you'll love the Fallen World series because it puts you right into that same headspace.
Okay.
And then me and Chris Woods, we got together over at his mother-in-law's lake house July 4th weekend. We knocked out half of a novel, and we just finished the rest of it here this past month. He's doing his edit run on it right now. It's called Smuggler's Run, and the original short story that was started on it was called Sidekicks, and that was in the Through the Gate anthology for Kevin Steverson's Salvage System. So we got that done, and then, well, in the meantime, I got another short story that was in
When Valor Must Hold. Okay.
The reviews and the responses I've got from it is that Howard could have wrote that story himself, and that to me is just, oh my God, because he's my number one author hero. It's just the way that he described all the world of Conan and the Hyperborean Age, Solomon Kane's story. I loved his way of writing, and I tried to emulate a lot of it. But it depends on the genre you're writing. You can't do that type of writing in sci-fi. It just don't always work.
Right.
You have to juggle it up a little bit. So I've got a lot of irons in the fire right now, and plus I'm a partner in a little mini press or a micro press, Three Ravens Publishing, and we're putting out a lot of short fiction, short novels, like 50,000-word novels, but it's stuff that still needs to be told. Stories are stories, and if they're a good story, why just wait, And some people don't want the hassle of doing all the admin and stuff. Oh, I've figured out how to do that, so I don't mind doing it either. It originally started out as mine, Benjamin Tyler Smith, and R.J. Layden's pet project to publish our own little labors of love.
I'm pulling this up here real quick. Let's see if I can. I think I've got your Three Ravens Publishing. Is this your? Is this you guys?
That's it.
Oh, perfect. I didn't put that link into. I didn't put that link into your low bar, so I'm going to put it here in the comments for people if they want to go also check that out. Because I did see that you had that on Twitter also, and I gave you a little follow on Twitter to both your author account and to Three Ravens Publishing. So hopefully folks will go, yes, please go take a look at that. So let's see.
Well, the first thing that came out on Three Ravens was Flux Runners. That was the one that started it all.
And these here, all these available titles. Wow, there's a lot of them.
It's been busy.
I'm just now clicking through some stuff here.
Yeah, we worked a deal with Jim Curtis, his RimWorld and his Gray Man series. He published those on his own through Amazon, but we have helped him to get it on audio, and all of his titles are now in work in audio.
I like this cover for some reason.
Oh, it's nice. If you like cop thriller, whodunit kind of stuff, you'll like the Gray Man series. Walt Longmire, if you've ever read it or watched the show.
Which one?
Series, Longmire.
Oh, I maybe have seen. Isn't it's with the girl from Battlestar Galactica?
Yeah, Katie Sackhoff plays Vic.
I think I've seen a couple episodes.
It's a similar genre. We got some poetry by Michael Hansen that we put out this year. Charity Ayers' Loki is out. Bloodstone is on its way. We are working to get that out next. Dan Holyfield, which you mentioned a minute ago, his Abducted Tom Darby adventure is out, and he's working on the next one. And then my little writing group, the Corner Scribblers here in Chattanooga, we're putting out flash fiction collections, and I'm working on the final edits for our first anthology that I'm hoping to have out next month. And then I've got a couple of my short stories out there. So it's slowly growing. And I've got probably 10 or 12 submissions sitting in queue for us to look at that haven't had time to do.
So what is it that you are planning to read for us today?
Well, I was going to read Widowmaker, so come on, on.
Okay. Well, for those of you who are joining us from home, so just so you know, before I turn the screen over here to William, what I will be in the background, I'm going to be in the comments. And if you guys have questions or anything that you would like to ask him as you're listening to him read, please just feel free to put those in the comments and converse with me there. I will be taking note of them. And when he's done reading, we will go over your guys' questions. And then at the very end of the show today, we are going to have a giveaway for your choice between books. And I'll reveal that when we get to that part of the show. But if you are ready, William, I will turn the screen over to you, put myself on mute, and be in the comments listening.
All right.
All right, here we go.
I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I know exactly what I'm going to do when I get back to the States. Private First Class Russo said in a thick Brooklyn accent. He shuffled through a handful of well-worn playing cards. I've got 4 books, he said, then looked at the soldier to his right. Your turn, Burns. I've got 2, Private Burns said as he tapped his hand level and laid the cards face down on the table. Your turn, Dershowitz. Burns reached under the table and retrieved an unopened bottle of beer, popping the cap loose on the edge of the table with a quick slap. Well, don't leave us hanging in suspense, Russo, Corporal Dershowitz said. 3 books for me, he said, placing his cards on the table. He pulled out a pack of Lucky Strikes from his shirt pocket, slid the cigarette from the opened end, then mouthed it and lit it with the smoldering stuff of previous smoke. I think you're just full of shit and like to hear your own lips flap, Russo. Russo scoffed. You're the one that's full of it, Dershowitz. Dershowitz snatched the beer from Burns before he'd taken his first sip. He upended the beer and emptied the bottle in 2 gulps and let out a loud, wet belch. That was my beer, Burns yelled. Not anymore, it isn't. I laughed, nursing one of my own rare and coveted drinks. Very funny, Sarge, Burns said. Watch it, Burns. That could be considered disrespect to a non-commissioned officer. I tapped a crooked Camel cigarette from my crumpled package, lifting the glass of an old kerosene lamp. I lit the smoke from the oily flame. Dust motes launched from the narrow shelf where the lamp sat and floated carelessly about in the only source of light in the old barn. The sweet smell of tobacco overpowered the smell of dry hay and livestock. Sorry, Sergeant Sullivan, Burns said as he shuffled through his hand, avoiding eye contact with me. Won't happen again, Sarge. Don't worry about it, Burns, I said with a chuckle and took a long draw from the unfiltered cigarette. I'm just messing with you, Private. Nothing to worry yourself about. I flashed a mischievous smile at him and took another sip from my warming beer. He likes to screw with the rookies, Burnsy, Russo said. Gershwin, tell Burnsy here what the Sarge did to you when you first reported for duty. Piss off, Russo. Are we going to play spades or what? Christ's sake, Gershwin said, uncomfortably shifting. Here we go again, Staff Sergeant Henderson said as he folded up a letter he'd just been working on. Why the hell do you fellas have to get Russo riled up like this? You know he won't shut up for hours once he gets started. Oh, har, freaking har. Very funny, Staff Sergeant. Might as well go ahead and tell Burns the story before your head explodes, I said, and took a long drink of warm beer. We'd acquired a case of freshly bottled sunshine from a local brewer earlier in the day, in exchange for a gallon of diesel and a pair of size 9 combat boots Russo had recovered from a German scout we'd caught snooping around camp the week before. We'd been assigned as a detachment of the 2nd Pursuit Squadron to Ford Air Base Jackson. Our orders were simple as an intercept unit. Chase down and destroy any German bomb raiders before they could reach Allied forces, or escort our bomb groups across the German lines as requested by HQ. They'd originally issued us 6 Curtiss P-40 Warhawks, 3 Lockheed P-38 Lightning, and a lone North American P-51 Mustang. Only a few days earlier, a baker's dozen of Northrop P-61 Black Widows arrived on our doorstep, fresh off the assembly line in the States. Without notice, a squadron of aircraft landed, rolled to a stop, and parked in a neat and tidy formation near the commandeered barn of our quaint little airfield in northern France. The Army Corps of Engineers had surveyed the area north of what remained of the village of Eversey and deemed it as suitable. Decades of livestock grazing had compacted the soil well enough for use by smaller aircraft. In hindsight, it would have been nice if the engineers had offered a few solutions to removing a steadfast herd of sheep from the path of the incoming aircraft without the use of brute force or a truck. The herdsmen didn't care for our routine use of the 50 cals to clear the runway, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. If that's the least of our problems, we're doing pretty damn good, I thought, and took another swig of my lukewarm beer. Well, you see, Russo said, Sarge here asked Burnsy if he was musically inclined in any way. Burnsy said he was, and that he played a bit of guitar growing up. And Sarge asked him if he'd like a chance to play an army banjo out back and help the unit out of a serious bind. Being the kiss-ass that he is, Burnsy jumped all over the opportunity. Next thing you know, Sarge here handed him a shovel, told him to start digging the next shitter pit out back of the barn. Russo laughed, slapping his knee. Can we play cards already? Burns looked to the steward. Isn't it your turn, Private? I can get $8, Private Stewart said, and leaned back in his chair. Oh, we've got ourselves a big spinner out here, Gershwood shouted. You know you're going to put us in the hole even further if you're bluffing again. Why would I bluff? Stewart dropped his hand face down on the table. Because you're full of it, Stewie, that's why, Gershwood said. Play your card already, Russo. Russo fanned out his cards and sorted through the hand. Keep your shorts on. I'm thinking. He carefully rearranged the position of the cards and chose one from the center of the hand. Placed the 6 clubs face up on the table. What kind of play is that? Are you trying to lose this round for us? No more than you are. No more than you are, Russo shouted back. Cool it, both of you. You start that arguing again, and I'll have the captain and the rest of the flyboys down here chewing on our asses. Fine, Russo said, shifting in his seat. I'll keep it down so precious pilots in the hayloft can get their beauty rest. So spit it out already, Gershwood said, changing the subject. What's the secret plan of yours, Russo? I almost forgot about that. It's simple, really, even for a bunch of apes like you guys. Russo laid his cards down and straightened the collar of his t-shirt. As soon as I get back to the States, I'm going straight home to kiss my ma. Then I'm going to go out and find me a good, God-fearing Italian woman to bring her home. Nothing against the Jewish girls or the Jewish or the Sicilian girls back in Brooklyn. I mean, there's more than a few hot numbers I wouldn't mind taking out a time or two. But Ma is just that sort of particular when it comes to marriage and prospective grandchildren. The woman I choose has got to be from a good, wholesome stock, you know. What would your ma say if you were to bring home a French girl, especially if it's true love? Private Stewart said. You know, I'm not honestly sure, come to think of it. Ma's never really said much of anything about Frenchies back in Little Paris on the west side of Brooklyn. Granted, there aren't any that I know from, excuse me. Granted, there aren't any that I know of from back in the old neighborhood, so that might be part of it. Hell, Russo, Private Stewart said. You can have the pick of the litter then. There's a whole herd of soft and fuzzy French girls at the end of the runway. Oh, ha, ha, Russo said. That would be more up Sergeant Sullivan's alley, said with a nod towards me. Better watch yourself, Private. Yeah. Better watch yourself, Private, I said, then turned up my beer. That was good, Burns. Thank you for the beer. I set the bottle down on the table and headed for the door. Where are you going, Sarge? Stepping out before it gets too deep in here. Slipped out the barn through a small side door. The moon hung high and full in the clear July sky. A warm lavender-scented breeze blew in from the south across the vast fields of fragrant flowering bush. Rounding the rear corner of the barn, I made my way to the tree line of a small copse of hardwood. Nature's rhythmic night songs of love struck me as a competition between the crickets of the underbrush and the frogs of a nearby pond. I finished my business and started back to the barn, stopping outside of the small door. I pulled another cigarette from the nearly empty package, lighting it from the previous one. I stripped the stub, making sure to stomp out the still smoldering ember when I heard a strange, grating screech from the airfield. It was like the sound made by scraping nails across a chalkboard, but mingled with an old metallic twang. Cautiously, I approached the front of the barn and crouched in the shadow of the structure. My breath caught in my throat as I waited, motionless. I waited for the slightest hint of movement among the small squadron of mixed aircraft parked on the side of the open pasture. Twisting metal screeched and popped from the nose landing gear bay of Jumpin' Jet, one of the unit's newly issued P-61 Black Widow pursuit aircraft. Originally, Russo saw her tail number, 4239212, and wanted to name her Double Deuce, complete with a 5-card poker hand painted across her nose containing 2 pairs of 2s, and an ace of spades in the center due to the last 3 digits of her tail number. Instead, I chose to name her after a blonde bombshell of a gal I knew back home. We dated for a short time before I enlisted and got shipped out to boot. I wasn't without a fair bit of artistic talent, so I took it upon myself to paint the likeness of Jess, topless in a torn and tattered dress, leaning back against the sill and holding a bar, or a Browning automatic rifle, across her bare chest. She held it close, snuggled deep into the ample painted cleavage. I doubt I'll ever get that particular image out of my mind. It was one hell of a night spent on the side of Lookout Mountain in Micklemore Cove, Georgia, guarding one of her father's stills from his competitors. One thing led to another, and before you knew it, we were both pouring sweat in the sweltering August night. And anyone who's spent time in Georgia in the middle of August knows there's no such thing as cool during that time of year. Something large had rolled in the underbrush about 50 yards down the hill from us. I jumped to my feet and grabbed the shotgun, ready for a fight. When I glanced back at her, that was the exact image that had been forever burned in my brain. Come to think of it, I don't know of any red-blooded man who'd want that image out of his mind. It turned out the noise we'd heard was actually a federal revenuer and not one of her father's competitors from over the mountain in Fort Payne. We detained him until the next morning when her father come up to the site and sent us back to the house for some breakfast. Something grunted loudly and pulled me out of the fond memories of Jess. Instinctively, I reached down to loosen the strap over my Colt Army revolver that hung on my right hip. My father had passed it down to me before I'd shipped out for the war. He'd carried it during the Great War. His father before him had carried it during the Spanish War. And his father before him had carried it during the War of Northern Aggression. Great-granddad Jacob had gotten it from the cold dead hands of a Union officer during the Battle of Chickamauga. so my father thought it was only fitting that I should carry it into the next war and make our family proud. I looked in the direction of the noise and saw something moving about in the shadows of Jumpin' Jess's nose landing gear bay. Probably just a possum or something, I thought, and wondered to myself if they had possums in France. The thing jerked and grunted in time with the sound of popping sheet metal. I put the strap back over the revolver and secured it in place. Without taking my eyes off the aircraft, I reached down into the wooden tool tray Burns had left sitting at the corner of the barn earlier in the day. The inch-and-a-half open-ended wrench I found was heavy in my grip, but would work fine for running the critter out of the landing gear. I crouched low as I crept across the field to the aircraft. I could hear a subtle, wet slurping sound that reminded me of a dog gnawing on a bone coming from the wheel well. Leaning down, I peered upward into the darkness of the bay. Nothing moved, but I could hear the faint sound of a raspy wheeze breathing. I shifted my position to the aft of the nose gear and saw a flinching movement within the darkness. I spent entirely too much time maintaining this bird for you to go and chew up her wiring, I said to the thing in the darkness. Don't know what you are, but you gotta go. I shifted again to get a better view before reaching blindly into the area. Retrieving my grandfather's Zippo from my pocket, I flicked it open and lit the battered lighter against my pant leg in one swift motion. Let's see if we can get a better look at you, I said. As I held the lighter near the opening, the thing moved. Claws scratched across the metal of the compartment as the thing scrabbled between the nose-strip upper mount and the forward bulkhead of the bay. I shifted to the front side of the strut, holding the ladder above my head to get a better look at the thing without sticking my head into the area. It moved, and I caught a quick glimpse of nearly hairless, fleshy brown section of hide. It had alternating stripes of darker and lighter skin that you'd see on a tabby cat. It shifted again as I moved the light around to get a better look. Well, I guess you're just an old mangy cat, ain't you? I mumbled as I tried to get a better look. I don't want to kill you if I don't have to. Come on out of there, and I'll let you go on your way. We'll just let bygones be bygones. Flipping the heavy steel wrench in the air, I caught it by the open crescent-like end, shifting my position to the rear strut. I straddled the nose wheel and sat down to get a better angle, and poked the tapered shaft end of the wrench into the space and immediately froze in place. The thing that stared back at me was unlike anything I'd ever seen in my 22 short years on this earth. Beady black eyes glared back at me from behind a long, wrinkled snout. It stank worse than the wet, musty stink of a hound at the end of a chase. Viscous yellow drool seeped from between hundreds of needle-like teeth. Its ragged and torn jackrabbit-like ears shook like one of those tiny rat dogs I'd seen rich ladies carry around in purses with them up in Chattanooga. It let out a low, hissing growl, similar to the sound I'd heard a trapped possum make. Reflexively, I stabbed at the creature with the end of the wrench as it lunged at me from the wheel well. It clawed and hissed, gnashing and snapping in my direction. I slid off the nose tire and moved to the side, backing out of the way of the thing as it clambered over the top of the strut. Suddenly, it let out a hoarse, barking cry and leapt for me. Without thinking, I brought the wrench around, connecting with the side of the thing's head. It writhed about on the ground, striking blindly at the air around it. I flipped the wrench back over and brought the crescent-shaped end down on the thing's head over and over again. It squealed in pain, lashing out at the wrench. I brought the makeshift weapon down once more on top of its head, and the creature went limp. Black ichor seeped from the wounds I'd inflicted on the thing. A long, gurgling gasp escaped its motionless form. Rushing back to the toolbox, I retrieved a pair of long-handled pliers and picked the thing up by the three clawed toes of its right foot. I held it up in the moonlight and examining its long, muscular form, then retrieved my lighter. I struck the lighter's flint and held up the creature again. It was at least 2 feet long when stretched out and was covered in fine fuzz. There was an overall fleshy brown color with darker brown stripes. Heavy black claws tipped both its toes and its 3 human-like fingers on each of its hands. I don't know what the hell you are. You sure as hell ain't. No. I don't know what the hell you are, but there sure as hell aren't any of you back in the hills of Tennessee, I said, and turned back, heading for the barn. Hey, Russo. I slipped into the side door of the barn. I think one of those illegitimate kids of yours came looking for their daddy. I held the creature up in the dim lamplight for all to see. Stewie crossed himself and mumbled something about demons, along with a quick Hail Mary. Wow, Russo, as ugly as you are, that thing's mom must have been a two-bag dog, Gershwitz chided. Damn, Russo, Staff Sergeant Henderson said with a laugh. I knew you were desperate, but wow. Piss off, Russo said to Henderson, flipping him the finger, then paused and retracted his finger. Burns walked over and cautiously examined the motionless creature. What is it? No clue, I said. But in the morning when we have some light, we need to take a good look in the nose wheel well jumping jet. I found it up behind the nose strut chewing along the wires or something. Is it a rabbit, maybe? Henderson stepped closer, putting his glasses up to the bridge of his nose. Can't be a rabbit, Russo said. There ain't no rabbit I've ever seen with claws like that. You've never been to Texas then, have you, Private? Henderson said as he examined the thing. The sudden sound of shearing metal reverberated through the night outside the barn. We all turned and looked in the direction of the large barn door and wondered at the sound of breaking glass and popping sheet metal hidden behind them. What in the hell? Henderson said as he stood and walked over to the large door at the front of the barn. He lifted the latch, opening the barn door, then froze. A cold loathing washed over me as I peered past the staff sergeant's shoulder. The creature and the pliers I held it in fell to the ground as I once again reached down and loosened the leather strap securing the Colt Army revolver in its holster. I watched, dumbfounded, as figures milled about in the shadows of the airfield. Before I could react, a fuel tank at the end of the runway suddenly erupted in a fireball that had to have stretched over 100 feet in the moonlit sky. The flames illuminated the area and the hundreds of creatures that swarmed over the aircraft of our quaint little airfield in northern France. Okay, so chapter 2. Jesus, Joseph, and Mary, Sergeant. I think we've got ourselves a live one. My head pounded at the sound of the voice with a heavy Irish accent. I heard a low mumbling grunt as something cold and hard poked me uncomfortably in the ribs. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that, another voice said, this one with a heavy Wisconsin accent. Something poked at me again. Could be like a snake after you've cut its head off and it keeps squirming and trying to bite you. Pretty sure he's alive, Grabowski, the Irishman said. See, look here. I can see his chest moving like he's breathing. Is he one of those things crawl up inside of him and it'll bust out of his chest when it gets too close? What the hell are you two standing around for? Another voice shouted. Start digging him out of the debris already. And for Pete's sake, am I going to have to tell you how to wipe your own asses, Nick? All right, suppose we should, shouldn't we? The Irishman said. Yeah, you should. Now get back to work, both of you, before I write you up for a court-martial. The thing, Sarge, the Wisconsin voice said with a sigh. Come on, let's get this over with, O'Brien. I suppose we might as well. Panic thoughts flashed through my mind of a terrifying night spent in an abandoned mine when I was 12 as something heavy shifted and pressed down against my chest. We'd been living on a small farmstead near the base of Sand Mountain at the time. The summers in Tennessee were long, hot, and jam-packed full of boredom and chores. Any opportunity the kids of the area could find to get together out in the woods for a little adventure, we did. Alan Lasley, son of a miner and one hell of a carpenter, had borrowed a pair of his daddy's carbide lamps and told us about this old abandoned coal mine his dad had taken him to that was only a mile or so up around the west side of the mountain from us. So like any other bored and adventure-starving youngin', we went to have ourselves a look. Sure enough, it didn't look like anyone had worked the mine in years. Weeds had grown up around the entrance, along with privet brush that all but blocked the opening from view. We all hem-hawed about and spent well over an hour inspecting the entrance before Alan got fed up with waiting. He struck the flint on his light and stormed into the mine alone. Reluctantly, we followed them down into the mine. The floor gradually sloped downward at a steady angle as we silently trudged into the darkness. We stopped at an intersection of 6 tunnels and began to argue which way to go next. Alan had the bright idea to mark the wall of the passage we'd come down by scratching an arrow that pointed up the tunnel with a small rock fragment he found on the ground. The back and forth bickering continued until Alan shouted at the top of his lungs and kicked one of the nearby supports out of frustration. Well, I just happened to be standing directly under that section of the roof being supported by the rotted and ancient support beam. I don't really remember much after that until I woke up in my bed surrounded by my friends, family, and Dr. Adair, who had traveled all the way from downtown Chattanooga. Apparently the ceiling had collapsed after Alan's little tantrum and dropped a ton of stone on top of me. I just happened to be lucky enough that it fell in such a way to trap me within a tiny pocket. At some point, one of the others had gotten our parents and dug me out of the collapsed tunnel. We'd all learned a valuable lesson and never went exploring to abandoned mines ever again. The weight pressing down on my chest suddenly shifted to my left and lifted away as the world around me exploded in a bright light that warmed my clammy, sweat-drenched face. I raised my arm, covering my eyes, to block blinding light. Well, bloody well be damned, he is alive, the Irishman said. Told you he was alive, the second voice said matter-of-factly. Would you look at that, Ski? The Irishman said. He's got 3 of those things impaled on that wrench. Grab his arm, Grabowski. Help me get him out of there. Sure thing, Sarge, said Grabowski. I felt myself being lifted and carried as if in a dream. My stomach lurched. I coughed and dry heaved without the slightest bit of relief. Give me your canteen, O'Brien. I glanced up after resting for what I hoped was the last time to see a tall but lean individual reaching out to a stocky red-headed man in a bowler hat. My face reflexively itched at the sight of the man's dry, bushy mutton chops. That might not be the best idea, sir. He's a bit green around the gills already, don't you think? O'Brien protectively clutched at his canteen. The tall man turned back and looked at something behind me. I could see the staff sergeant's stripes that adorned either sleeve of his uniform. He adjusted the sling straps of his Thompson submachine gun where it hung across his shoulder. What about you, Ski? Is the canteen full of water or whiskey? Grabowski chuckled lightly. Sure would be nice if it was full of whiskey, he mused. A tall, dark-haired man came into view, standing to my right. There you go, Cap, he said. A large goiter on his neck bobbed as he talked. He handed the canteen to the staff sergeant who knelt on the ground beside me. Drink slow, laddie, O'Brien said. You've taken a wee beating about the head from the looks of it. Here, the staff sergeant said as he popped the cap off the canteen and helped me to clean up. You're lucky as hell you didn't burn to death, kid. It's like you were blown clear of the structure by the explosion. Can you tell me who you are and what happened? I gladly took the canteen and turned it up, the cool water soothing my dry throat. Oh, now, son, sip slowly, unless you want to start puking again. You're a bit banged up, but otherwise it looks like you still have all your parts. I nodded as I took another swig, swishing the water around my parched mouth. I spit and took another sip. The name is Sullivan. Grady Sullivan, lead mechanic of the 2nd Pursuit Squadron, 4th Detachment Baker. The staff sergeant extended his hand and smiled. Craig Ruffey, he said, 325th Glider Infantry Regiment, 82nd Airborne Division. I took the proffered hand and glanced up at the young-looking man. Flying coffins, huh? I smiled and leaned up, using the sergeant's hand to pull myself forward. I thought those assholes from the 82nd Airborne were crazy. You must qualify as certified batshit crazy to take a ride in one of those flying heaps. Rusty grunted and laughed. Yeah, you could say that. Can you tell us what happened? I started to scratch the side of my head and jerked away from my own hand as pain shot across my side. I wouldn't mess with that too much before we can get you cleaned up. Rusty produced a handkerchief from his pocket, wetted it, and then again patting it against the side of my head. You remember what happened? Well, the last thing I can remember. Whoop! Hey, we're in luck. We should still be able to get this bird in the air. Just some cosmetic damage from the looks of it. I leaned left to glance around the staff sergeant. An individual dressed in the khaki can of a Marine flight suit stomped at an upper cowling panel from the number 1 engine nacelle of Jumpin' Jet. The hell do you think you're doing? Get your grubby... I don't know if I can say that one. Get your grubby hands off her. Get your sorry jarhead ass off my plane. I reached for the revolver at my hip, only to find the gun missing and holster empty. Hey, I said get the hell off of her. Scrambling to my feet, I pushed past the staff sergeant and sprinted for my aircraft. The Marine walked to the end of the wing and bounced. Don't stand on the wingtips. The Marine ducked, laying flat on top of the wing as I began throwing rocks at him. I haven't spent hours upon hours turning wrenches on Jess for you to come along and stomp all over her back. Sergeant Sullivan. Hey, Sergeant Sullivan, Rusty snapped his fingers in front of my face. Calm down, Sergeant. That's Warrant Officer Pierce. He's with us. I don't give two shits if he's MacArthur himself. Get off my plane. I threw another rock at the Marine pilot. You know what's good for you? You'll stand down right now, Sergeant. If that plane is the only flyable aircraft in this field, then we're going to board her and fly ourselves back to one of the rear base camps, regardless of what you want. Is that understood? I looked around at the devastation wrought across the quaint little airfield. Wisps of smoke danced about the charred remains of the lone P-51 Mustang and the two P-38 Lightnings. My plane! Holy shit, what happened to my plane? Things didn't leave us much to work with, the Marine said. He looked around from the top of the plane, hands on his hips. Give me a few to check the systems on this bird, and I'll let you know if we can get her airborne. Rusty tapped me on the arm and pointed toward jumping Jess. You think we could fit all seven of us in there? By this point, I was fuming. I'm sure he saw my jaw muscles flexing as I fought to bite my tongue and keep myself from saying something to an officer that I'd regret later. I glanced over and let out a reluctant breath. Yeah, we could all fit, but it sure as hell won't be comfortable. We'll have to dump some of the ammo, too. We at least need to adjust our weight to make sure we can get off the ground. Good, Rusty smiled and slapped me across the shoulder. Think you're up to giving Pierce a hand getting her flight worthy? You mean the jarhead flyboy up there on my girl's back? That would be him. Letting out a long, reluctant sigh, I looked up with a sidelong glance. Don't suppose I have much choice, do I? Not really, he chuckled. All right, listen up, you apes. Staff Sergeant Rusty climbed on top of the remains of the old barn and stood in full view of the troops. Gather anything usable. Guns, ammo, rations, meds. Grabowski, you and Doyle, search the bodies, take anything usable, police their tags while you're at it. What about you guys? Or what about my guys? I stepped around in front of Rusty. You can't just leave them here like this. Rusty laughed with a slight smile. Well, we can, and we will, Sergeant. We need to get back to someone in charge and report what we found here and down the road a few miles back. I'm sure my face twisted with a look of confusion. Rusty rotated the Thompson so it hung behind his back and pulled a cigar from his breast pocket. He bit the tip off of one. Did I lose that? Oh, wait. I'm on the cable. Sorry about that. Doesn't help when I'm tapping on the cable by accident. He bit the tip off the cigar and lightly chewed at the other, wetting it. You still haven't told me what happened here, Sergeant. He patted his pocket, searching for something. I produced my worn Zippo lighter, struck it on my leg, and held it out for him. Found one of those things messing around in the nose gear of Jess there. I said with a sideways nod toward the aircraft. Then the next thing you know, we're being overrun with the little bastards. They swarmed in like some sort of biblical plague or something. Rusty grunted a nod. Leaning forward, he placed the tip of the cigar on the offered flame and puffed. The spicy, sweet scent of tobacco replaced the soothing scent of the region's lavender industry. That's about what it looked like with the column of German armor we came across a few miles back. Something that shredded a group of Panzer tanks like they were tissue paper. I followed the captain's gaze as he looked at something on the ground behind me. Impelled on the wrench I'd used to kill the first creature were three more of the things. You wouldn't think it to look at them, but my guess is these guys hit the column first before they found your airfield. What do you think they are? No idea, but besides reporting on the failure of our original mission, we need to get this to someone so they can run it up the chain. He let out a long, reluctant sigh. Grabowski! Yes, sir! You, Hollywood and Doyle, go ahead and police the bodies. Use the field stones from that wall over there and cover them. Damn it, Hollywood grumbled. Sure, we'll get right on it, Grabowski said. Rusty turned back to me, his face obscured in a cloud of thick smoke. Thanks, I said, meaning it. These were my guys. Don't mention it, Sergeant, he said to me with a nod. It'll at least keep the vultures off the poor bastards. He puffed on the cigar again. I want you to bag and tag those critters you killed over there, and gather your gear and get to work with Piers. I want to be in the air before it gets dark. You don't have to tell me twice. I'd much rather not be here when those things decide to come back. After a brief search, I was able to find my revolver and my rucksack in what remained of the small barn. The night before was still a blur in my mind. I gathered up my things and prepared jumping desks for flight with a little help from the jarhead Pierce. The things had gouged holes through a few of the aircraft's sheet metal panels. We were lucky nothing structural had been damaged in the attack. After swapping a few hydraulic lines from one of the other aircraft and splicing two fairly large wire bundles back together, we loaded up. The P-61 Black Widow was one hell of an armored beast. The original design for the aircraft had been based on the contract requirements of the British Purchasing Commission for a night fighter, which included the use of the newly developed Airborne Intercept Radar, or AI for short, which was a self-contained unit capable of being installed on smaller aircraft. This contract was driven by Britain's urgent need for a high-altitude, high-speed night flyer to intercept the Luftwaffe bombers attacking London. Jack Northrop's vision included a dual-engine, dual-tailboom design with a three-man crew of pilot, gunner, and radar operator, equipped with forward search radar, tail warning radar, 420mm Hispano M2 cannons, 450 caliber M2 Browning machine guns, and the capability to carry either bombs or unguided rockets on its wing mounts made it one hell of a heavy fighter. Warrant Officer Pierce being the only pilot among our battered and pieced together crew, sat in the pilot seat. I strapped into the gunner's position just above and behind the pilot, while the rest of the Joes stuffed themselves in the radar operator's compartment at the rear of the crew compartment. There wasn't anything comfortable about it, but we were all aboard. Powering just to full throttle, we rolled across the empty field and quickly took to the sky. I looked out the gunner's window and watched as the ground gradually dropped away. Pierce banked the plane to the left, steering us to the northwest in the direction of Omaha Beach HQ. That's the end of chapter 2. You want me to keep going?
No, thank you so much. I'm sorry. I
wasn't sure where we were on time.
No, we are not yet out of time. So, but we do have about 8 minutes left. So you filled that time perfectly with chapters 1 and 2 there from your book. And we do have some questions from the audience. If you would like to take some of those questions. Awesome. And thank you so much for reading. Looks, what happened with your camera there somewhere in the middle?
Cable at the back. My laptop camera sucks. So I got this external that I sold from the kids upstairs for their school stuff because it's got a better quality.
Well, such things happen. I have fur babies over here, and they are constantly in my lap, bumping trying to love on the camera. They like to steal things. So I'm scrolling back here, looking through. Here we go. So one of our questions that we have was from Denise. And the question was, when is Flux Runners 2 coming?
I am actually working up the notes and I've already started working on the prologue. So before the year's out, it's going to be out.
Before year end. Okay, that is our ETA. So thank you so much, Denise, for your question. And also, I guess I should say, since we're going to be answering these, let me put this out there really quick. We are doing the giveaway today for your choice between Flux Runners and Widowmaker. Those were the 2 books. And so the winner will get to choose which one they would want. If you would like to be entered into the drawing, which we will do here at the end of the show, please, now is the time to type your name into the comments, and we will add you to the wheel, and then we will draw live at the end of the show. So, it says here digital copy in my ticker bar. So I don't know if it's. Are you going to do those in digital or in a physical copy? Okay, either or. Okay, great. So back to our questions, because I figure we'll let people enter their names as we are answering the questions. That gives folks some time to do that. So we had a next question here from Jack Schweitzer, which is, how many unpublished and half-finished books do you have?
You really want me to answer
This is-
that? Well, see, I'm working on this thing called getting rid of the day job that will absolutely help that process. My squirrels are so rampant. I have a slush pile, dozens of stories. It's that simple.
I think that is probably true of every author ever, though, right?
I'm working with a couple of other authors that we're tossing ideas back and forth on some co-author items. And if this works out well, then I'll be able to get some of these stories done and the series started and open the universes up. So I'm hoping it works.
Okay, so we have one from Dan here. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit and then I'll circle back because I'm doing the questions out of order a little bit. But Dan's question was, what is next on Will's writing schedule? You need to write more.
As soon as I catch up on a couple of the editing things that I got to do for Three Ravens, the Flux Runners Kids book, Galactic Kids Club, will be the next thing. Because I have to get that done. I have promised the kids that I will finish it. And then Flux Runners 2 is the next one on the list.
All right, perfect. Let's see. Mutant File asks, what are some of the best sources of inspiration for your story creation? And also, or I guess, what sorts of things do you do to get past writer's block?
Inspiration for the stories.
I remember you said Conan earlier on in the show, the author of Conan.
It could be as simple as
That's fair.
Well, the story that I wrote for this, which is Conan-esque, it honestly started by watching a music video, Alien Warfare, I think is the name of it. They are out of New Zealand, and what's the language? The Maori. Crap, I can't think of the language down there. The Polynesian language.
I'm sorry, what is the question? What are you asking me?
That came from just a music video, and these guys are singing in the Maori language in the music video. If they were going away from.
Oh, wait, who? No, wait.
The band's name is Alien Weaponry, but they had this one video, and they sing in, can't think of the name of the language. No, it's Polynesian.
Well, Polynesians. So I guess I guess Maori, I would think that Maori or
that inspired that whole story, and now it's an entire series that I'm going to be working on. Flux Runners. Honestly, the spark of that was an old video game. A video game that I played the crap out of in the 80s, and it was one of those, I found my notebook. I started looking through it, and that nostalgia kicked in, and the next thing you know, the squirrels are working up the story idea of where it's going, and our guys hit the flux point, and they're off in no man's land, and they got to figure out how to get back home. It just all depends on what the story is, and I could just be cutting the grass, and something popped up, and I got to stop and go get a notepad or something. As for writer's block, shift gears, do something else. Go do the dishes, go cut the grass, go sharpen the knife. Do something mundane and just let your mind go numb for a little bit, and don't think about anything. Just let it go numb for a bit, and it's really hard to do.
Yeah. It's kind of the Zen technique, right? Where you do a rote activity, which kind of frees eventually your mind relaxes and kind of lets go to what it's clinging, and trying to think too hard about.
I have practiced meditation for a long while. It is a very good stress reliever. But even doing those little mundane tasks can be a meditation in its own, because it just lets you get rid of
So we have one more question that I see here, unless I'm missing something, but I don't think I am, which is from Gunther. And the question is, how do you select the names of your characters?
It depends on if, for whatever reason, somebody has inspired the character. Like Flux Runners, I personally know pretty much every character in that book. It is one big giant Tuckerization. Denise, she's in it. She's in the first one.
Well, so I kind of had a question that sort of builds on this one actually a little bit, which was so you had so much description in your book, like just describing, and I thought it was actually quite good. I really liked listening to your descriptions of the hangars and the barns and just the scenery in general, like all of the things I felt like you did a really good job with. But I wondered in the course of that, are those descriptions based on real places that you have been to? Are they completely in your imagination?
Some, yes. I am one of those stupid kids that have went into an abandoned coal mine. Growing up in southern West Virginia, they're everywhere. And
wow, that sounds so scary. Aren't you afraid if you go in an abandoned coal mine, it will collapse on you?
I didn't go back in them anymore. I had one of those. We didn't have an exact experience like that, but similar. Somebody got stupid and was beating on stuff. Things started falling. Okay, we're done.
Yeah, that sounds scary.
if I can't actually pull on personal experience, then the next best thing is honestly Google Maps. Go into the 3D mode, go down to Street View, and put yourself in that place. Messenger of Death is a short story.
That is a cool idea. That's a really good idea.
Well, Messenger of Death is a short story that I just recently submitted to Writers of the Future, and I think it was for the third quarter. And it takes place in Dublin, Dublin along Fleet Street. And I just dropped myself in on Street View and started looking around and walked the street.
That is a really cool idea.
Utilize the tools available to you.
Yeah. Well, sometimes, you don't even think about doing those things, right? I mean, anybody can do that, but sometimes that's just not an idea that occurs to you to do. And I think you're actually the first author we've ever had that's even suggested something like that. And it's kind of ingenious, to be honest. Like you can literally explore anywhere and then translate it into written word.
I think it was Tim Powers. The Writers of the Future, they have a free online workshop right now. Tim Powers, Orson Scott Card, and I can't remember who the other one was. The announcers or the presenters for it. But Tim Powers, he talked about that. Like, go on Google, look on Google Maps, find your stuff.
Yep.
So he mentions that. But I like to get hands-on. With Widowmakers, I went down to the Aircraft Museum down at Warner Robins Air Force Base down here in Georgia. And I got to turn wrenches on an actual B-17. They let me volunteer and go in there and work on the aircraft. And, well, because I had aircraft experience, they had no problem. They're like, yeah, come on, please. So I installed brake lines on it, and I got to crawl all over the thing and inside and out. But, oh, my God, it was an amazing bird. I've never got to be that close to a B-17. And I was climbing inside of an A-26 and a B-25, and they just let me have that in the hangar, and that was amazing. So go to museums, go look at stuff, get hands on it if you can.
Museums are a good idea too.
Go do these things where you can get personal experience on it.
Okay, well, so that it is 3:00. And that was the last of our questions. And that brings us around to doing the actual drawing here for our book. So I've got everybody's name from the audience that wanted to be entered. And I'm going to now share our screen and pull up our wheel.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes. So everybody who is on our Patreon, all of our Patreon patrons automatically get an entry. And then plus everybody who comments in the comments here on the show today live. And then I will just click the spin. So the wheel picks, because there's more than 50 entrants, the wheel picks a random 50 from the list that I've entered. And let's see here. Okay, and here we go. I'll click and spin. All right, Kavajan is the winner for today, and I am sure that this is one of our Patreon patrons, so I'm sure she will be glad to hear that she has won a free copy of your book, and I will put you in contact with her after the show. Is there anything that you would like to say to everybody? I know now we have your books, all of your information for everybody at home is in the low bar. So if you are on YouTube or Facebook, you should be able to look in the descriptions or the expanded comments there and see the links for William everywhere. You can get his books on Amazon or on the his own website, which is williamjosephroberts.com. Is there anything that you would like to say to everybody before we bid one another adieu?
For any of the aspiring authors out there, don't give up. We all get rejections. We all get bled on. And that's one thing. You need to have tough skin. You need to have people bleed on your stuff. You don't want mom answers. Oh, yeah, that looks great. Yeah, you did a wonderful job. No, that's crap. You need somebody to bleed on your work and tell you how bad it is so you can improve it. But writing groups can be good, but they can also be detrimental. It depends on if they just want to spin their wheels and talk about how good of writers they are, or if they actually want to improve their craft. That's why the Corner Scribblers, we are a support group. We're not a critique group. We help each other to learn the craft. The collections that we're putting together, everybody gets on there and everybody's editing. And
now, is this a thing that everyone can join, or?
The Corner Scribblers is a Chattanooga local writers group.
Okay.
But if you're going to do a writers group, do it so that it's helping everyone. Everybody needs to bleed. Everybody needs to get on there and put their 2 cents in so that the others can see what they're seeing. Because you can't learn and grow if you keep seeing the same thing over and over. You just go stagnant. But absolutely, don't give up. Reach out and find somebody that will help you to take a step up. Network with other authors, network with publishers. It's important. It really is.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And I will, of course, follow up with you after the show. It was great having you on. And with I just love your unique mashup of worlds that we kind of have here, the military, but sci-fi fantasy. So that's pretty cool. And I will bid you a happy Friday afternoon. I guess since you're on the East Coast, it's probably evening for you now, huh?
Yeah,
6 o'clock?
Yeah, evening, and we're getting ready to head to the lake.
All right. Well, you have a good one and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.